And I was so lucky. My mom spoiled me. I got to see the original Broadway cast. And they were doing the Broadway Cares Equity Fights AIDS auction, where you can bid to...
She was 17 years old, standing on the set of a Nickelodeon show wearing a red wig and a schoolgirl outfit, being told exactly how to stand, exactly how to speak, exactly how to exist in front of a camera. And she smiled, and she did what she was told, and she filed everything away. Every instruction, every limitation, every moment where someone in a position of power looked at her and saw a product rather than a person. She was taking notes the entire time because Ariana Grande has never been what the industry thought she was. Not the bubbly Nickelodeon sweetheart, not the dangerous pop provocateur, not the tragic girl defined by her grief. She has always been something far more deliberate, far more controlled, and far more interesting than any of those narratives. And the story of how she survived everything that was thrown at her, the industry manipulation, the public consumption of her trauma, the relentless attempts to define her on everyone else's terms, is the story nobody has told properly. Until now. Stay with me, because what I am going to share by the end of this video is going to completely change the way you hear her music.
Technically, it was just such a massive assignment, from making sure each step that I took matched on either side of the filming, and then emotionally it had to line up, and vocally it had to line up, and everyone had to kind of be very in sync. So it was a really intricate dance that we had to do for Girl in the Bubble.
To understand Ariana Grande, you have to go back to before the fame, because the foundation of everything she has become was laid in a place most people overlook entirely. She grew up in Boca Raton, Florida, in a family that recognized very early that something unusual was happening with this child. She was performing before she could properly contextualize what performing meant. Theater, vocal training, the complete and consuming obsession with music that tends to show up in the people who eventually change it. But here is the detail that matters most about her early years, and that gets consistently glossed over in the official biography. Ariana Grande did not stumble into the entertainment industry. She engineered her way into it with a focus that was almost frightening in someone so young. She knew what she wanted, she knew what it would cost, and she decided very early that she was willing to pay it. Nickelodeon came calling, and on the surface, it looked like the dream. Victorious, then Sam and Cat, the platform, the fan base, the name recognition that opens doors. But behind the glossy surface of those years was a set of experiences that Ariana has only ever spoken about in fragments. And those fragments, when you piece them together, tell a very different story about what it actually feels like to be a young woman inside the Nickelodeon machine. There were creative constraints that went far beyond the normal limitations of children's television. There were decisions being made about her image, her sound, her public persona that she had no meaningful input into. There were moments, and she has alluded to these carefully across various interviews, where the gap between who she was and who the network needed her to be felt almost unbridgeable. She was being built into something, and the something being built bore very little resemblance to the artist she knew herself to be. The transition out of that world was not the clean, triumphant pivot that the pop music narrative tends to present it as. It was messy and complicated and fought for in ways that never made it into the press releases. When Yours Truly dropped in 2013 and the world suddenly understood that there was a voice inside that red wig that had absolutely no business being on a children's television network, the industry response was immediate and revealing. Everyone wanted a piece of her. Everyone had an opinion about what she should do next, what she should sound like, what she should look like, who she should be seen with, and what that association should mean for her brand. The wolves do not wait for you to find your footing before they start circling. And Ariana, 20 years old, freshly out of a system that had spent years telling her what to do, was suddenly in a room full of people with very loud voices and very specific agendas. All of them convinced they knew better than she did what Ariana Grande should become. She listened, she nodded, And then she went into the studio and did exactly what she wanted. That pattern, the listening, the apparent compliance, followed by the quiet and absolute insistence on her own creative vision, is the through line of her entire career. It is easy to miss because she has always presented it wrapped in sweetness and deflection and an almost performance level of gratitude and humility. But underneath that presentation is a woman with an iron grip on her own artistic identity who has never, not once, allowed the industry to fundamentally alter what she was making. Every album she has released has been a document of where she actually was emotionally and creatively, regardless of what the market was asking for. That is rarer than it sounds. The commercial pressure on an artist of her scale to make music that tests well, that follows trends, that gives radio programmers exactly what they need, that pressure is enormous. She has consistently ignored it and made her best-selling records anyway. That is not luck. That is a level of artistic self-knowledge that most musicians spend their entire careers trying to find. And then 2017 happened. And this is where the story becomes almost impossible to talk about without feeling the weight of it. The Manchester Arena bombing at her concert on the 22nd of May killed 22 people and injured hundreds more. The victims were mostly young women and girls. Her fans, children who had come to see her perform, who had saved up for tickets, who had worn her merchandise and knew every word of every song. The grief of that night is not something that belongs to the public conversation in the way that the public conversation tends to treat it. It is not content. It is not a narrative beat in a pop star biography. It is a catastrophe that happened to real people, and Ariana Grande was at the center of it in a way that no amount of therapy or time or music will ever fully resolve.
What she did in the aftermath tells you everything about who she is. She did not disappear. She did not retreat into silence, which would have been entirely understandable and which everyone around her apparently advised. She organized the One Love Manchester benefit concert 8 days later. 8 days. She stood on that stage and she sang and she held it together and she gave the people who needed it a reason to come back together in the place where the worst thing had happened. And then when the camera stopped, she fell apart in private the way that anyone would, and she put herself back together and she kept going. The PTSD she has spoken about since, the anxiety, the way that trauma rewires the nervous system in ways that do not announce themselves cleanly. She has been honest about all of it in a way that required a courage that is completely separate from the courage it takes to perform in front of stadiums. Thank You Next came out in 2018, and it did something that pop music rarely manages to do. It was simultaneously a massive commercial product and a genuinely personal artistic statement that could not have been made by anyone other than the specific person who lived through the specific things she had lived through. The title track alone rewrote the rules of the breakup song, not by being angry, not by being bitter, but by being grateful, by reframing every painful relationship as something that contributed to growth rather than something that diminished her. That is not a pop songwriting trick. That is a genuine philosophical position arrived at through genuine suffering and genuine work. The world heard it as a bop. What it actually was a window into a mind that had decided, very deliberately, to refuse the victim narrative that the world was practically begging her to inhabit. Because here's the thing about Ariana Grande that the media has never quite been able to reconcile. She has had more material for a tragedy narrative than almost any other artist of her generation. The Manchester attack, the death of Mac Miller, the very public disillusions of relationships that played out under a level of scrutiny that would destabilize most people entirely. The industry had the tragedy arc all written and ready for her. It was practically gift-wrapped. And she looked at it, and she picked up a pen, and she wrote, "Thank You Next" instead. That choice, to refuse the narrative she was being handed and write her own, is the defining act of her career. Everything else flows from it. What is happening now with Ariana is perhaps the most interesting chapter yet. Her role in Wicked, years in the making, a project she has spoken about with a reverence that makes clear it is not just a career move, but something close to a lifelong dream arriving exactly when she needed it most, represents a version of her that the world has not fully seen before. The actress, the collaborator, the woman who grew up wanting to be on Broadway and who took the longest, most turbulent, most unimaginable route to get there. The performance she delivers as Glinda is being talked about in terms that go well beyond what anyone expected from a pop star making her major film debut. Because she is not a pop star making her major film debut. She is an artist who has been preparing for this her entire life, who has spent 20 years building the technical and emotional toolkit to do exactly this, and who arrived on that film set knowing exactly who she was and exactly what she was capable of. There is a version of Ariana Grande's story that the industry wanted to tell, the Nickelodeon girl who got lucky with her voice, the pop star defined by her tragedies, the celebrity whose private life was public property. That version is easy. It is familiar. It fits the shapes that the entertainment machine knows how to package and sell. But the real version, the one hiding in plain sight across 20 years of work and interviews and music and choices, is the story of someone who has been in complete and utter control the entire time, who took every label they tried to put on her and quietly set it aside, who transformed every attempt to define her into fuel for the next thing she was already building. She was never the girl in the red wig. She was always the woman who knew exactly when to take it off.